Whew, what a week. So, what's going on, guys? It's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy last few days. So yesterday I got in another package that I sent out to. For those who haven't seen my other videos, I'm trying to collect a lot of stuff, and here in Hawaii it's literally impossible to collect stuff. We have a few stores, but nothing like the mainland with family-owned stores or collectible shops. We have a few, but not as many, which kind of sucks. So I've been collecting figures, toys, whatever you want to call them, action figures, and old school video games. And like I said, I got another package. This one I ordered off YouTube. Package was alright. So this is from Salvage Game and Camera Shop. Literally, the YouTube page that I ordered this from said it was a shop in Japan, but the order came from a shop in California. That's a Japanese shop. So I'm guessing they have a couple different shops like Book Off. It came with a little origami crane, which is pretty awesome. So if you're out in Japan or in Cali, definitely want to check these guys out. Comes bubble wrap. Within the bubble wrap, the Japanese version of the name is pretty hard to say, but the American name, if you remember, is called Tech Romancer. Basically a 1 to 2 player game where mechs that resemble famous anime mechs you got to control and fight. It is an old Dreamcast game. As of course, everything in here is Japanese. Which doesn't really bother me, since I've played Japanese games most of my life. But it has been a while. So if you can see here, it's more of a Jonkin pole. one attack is better than the other. So we have this character that is basically your huge giant robots. It's similar to Mazinga. You have these. I think this one was similar to the Evangelion. And this was a Cat Labor or Gundam. This, any weird anime mech. Kind of reminds me of Boss Spot from Mazinga. Madcross. Well, Bean Madcross. Think Cyberbots, but less Capcom style gameplay. I honestly love this game. When it first arrived, or first came out, I did buy the Japanese version because it was the first one I saw. We had a shop here in Hawaii called Toys and Joys that sold it. I'm so happy I could actually find it again. The American version, the Tech Romancer, is actually pretty expensive. It is a hard to find game. It actually was hard to find a couple years after it came out. Right now you can buy it for a little over $100 to a little over $200. The Japanese one, this one cost me about a little over $40. So if you can find and play the different versions, sometimes it's cheaper to find other versions. Sometimes the Japanese games are more expensive, sometimes the American games are more expensive, depending on how many games were released and how hard it is to find. I've never seen the European versions or the PAL versions really that expensive, but I mean, they're as expensive as, or a little bit less expensive as the less of the two, either other two. All my systems that I have, well, I shouldn't say all, my Xbox Series X, well, technically it can play Japanese games. So, for those who don't know, the first console that I remember, or I had, was the Atari. Then they had a Super Nintendo, but in Japan it was called Super Famicom. No. America was Nintendo, Japan was Famicom. For some strange reason, the Famicom was a thin console that kind of resembled the Super Nintendo. It was a top loader. But the games were about this size. They were smaller than the American games, but a bit longer. Then the NES came out, which was one that you could open slide the game in, push down, and shut. The cartridges were huge in America. Not sure what they used the extra space for, but yeah. Then the Famicom came out. Or not then the Super Nintendo came out, and the Super Famicom. That was my first system I converted to play Japanese games. All you had to do was go into the top and take out the two prongs. So for those of you, this was the Super Nintendo version. You notice these two prongs here, or holes in the cartridge. That was the way that they got you to decide which system you want. The Super Nintendo and Super Famicom actually look exactly alike. Well, I wouldn't say exactly, but very close. The only difference was the Americans had the two prongs inside, the Japanese had none. So all you had to do was take off the two prongs inside of the American system and they could play Japanese games. It would still be in Japan or Japanese language. But the first game, or Japanese game, I actually played and needed to do it was Fire Pro Wrestling #1. And I've never I did get a chance to buy the TurboGrafx. I never got into it. I've never picked up the Sega Master System, but when the Genesis came out, I saw it as a literally the old commercials used to say Sega does what Nintendo don't, and that's what it was. There were some games on Sega that Nintendo couldn't really do on the Super Nintendo. First major thing you saw was Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo. Fatalities were there, but they were watered down a little, and the blood was turned, I believe, either white or blue. In the Genesis, it was red and brutal. And they went further than any other brutal game when Sega created their own fighter, the Eternal Champions. That was insane compared to the original MK. MK2 came out, and Eternal Champions still had the more gruesome fatalities, but or overkills, whatever you want to call it. But when MK2 finally came out, that's when the Super Nintendo allowed blood, allowed the red, allowed the fatalities to be the fatalities. They did, for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, they did come out with this converter. If you can see, they slice this out. It fits into the American system. and the Japanese game could fit on top, no problem. If you didn't want to, cut open your your Super Nintendo prongs. Genesis, there was nothing that you could do to change the game except get these. It's the Sega Mega Drive adapter. It was from a third-party company called Honeybee. If you can read there, it says Nintendo. It was $20 when it first came out. It literally looks like a Sega Genesis cartridge. You just slide it in. And it was just a converter. You could put the American or Japanese games on there, or a PAL, and actually just play them. Let's see, after that, I think for Nintendo they came out with the GameCube next. Anybody that had a GameCube, it was a bit harder to trick to play Japanese games. But what they learned was that you could put a switch in the back that you could switch between Japanese GameCube or American GameCube. There was something inside the system that goes through that blocked certain games, and if you can switch it to another MIS that you could play. The Sega Saturn, you had to open it up, go inside, and put on another board that allowed you to play Japanese games. So was the Dreamcast. When there was no way to switch the original Xbox. When PlayStation 1 came out, all you needed was a spring or weight or something to hold down the button. So what it was you open it up, you put the American game in, you inserted like a spring in the back and onto the button to allow the game to boot up without closing the lid. Then you take out the game and put in the Japanese game and close the lid, and it would boot up the Japanese game. I honestly still don't understand how that worked, but it did. PS2, I believe the only way is to go into the system and modify it. I'll be honest with you. When the PS2 came out, I just bought both an American and a Japanese system to play both games. Then I found out towards the ending of it that I just wanted to play the Japanese games, and I got rid of the American PS2. There was only a slight few games that I wanted to play on the American PS2. Twisted Metal, of course, was one of them. And all they had was Twisted Metal Black. Great game. Probably the best of the series. Then they brought out the Twisted Metal for the PS3, which again was a harder way to convert. I honestly don't know if there was a way to convert the PlayStation 3 to play Japanese games. I can't remember. I don't think a lot of people looked into it. Honestly, I think it's, if I remember correctly, the PS3 is a DVD player. The 360 was a HD player, HD DVD player. So PS3, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and the PS5 should all be able to play Japanese games on the American system, and vice versa. And I know you're all looking at me strange, like, wait, what? So the Xbox 360, certain games, certain American games played on the Japanese system, and certain Japanese games played on the American system. Certain games were not region blocked, so you have to find a list for that. As for like DVD players goes, like the new Xbox and the new PlayStations, yes, they are region blocked, but unlike CD or all the other CDs systems or cartridge systems, each region was locked to one region. I'm not sure what the region was for America. I think it was one. But that only included America and one other country. Maybe Canada. I can't remember. So you could only play those games. The DVDs, Region 1 is America, but it includes about 6 or 7 other countries, and Japan is one of them. So with the Xbox One and all these other consoles, unless they really do something to the games itself, all the games are for that region can be played on any of the region's systems, which actually also makes it so much simpler for the console makers, because all you gotta do is make one console and have it be able to go to several other different languages, and then just ship out the one console instead of making several. But anyway, hope you guys like the conversation of going back and looking at all these old systems. I will be trying to figure out how to get some gameplay from older games into my YouTube channel. Hope you guys enjoyed the unboxing or mail call. I do have one more game coming in. I have no idea when that is, and that is another Japanese import Dreamcast game, Project Justice. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's the Japanese name for a Capcom fighter called Rival Schools. So Rival Schools was the American name. Project Justice is the Japanese name. Dreamcast had Project Justice, which was the second game of Rival Schools. The PlayStation, I believe, is the only system that has Rival Schools 1 and 2 for the PS1. I think the original Rival Schools on the Sega game platform might have been on the Sega Saturn. I also hopefully have my plug, AV RCA plug for my Super Nintendo coming in, and a new multi-box. Slowly and surely getting the room fixed and getting things to normal. And like I said, everything that I'm doing that you guys might find interesting, I'm going to take you along for the ride. Toy hunting, unboxing, mail orders, and once everything gets done, reviewing figures, hopefully, toys, so you guys get to see a little bit of maybe something you might be interested in collecting. So until then, thanks for watching. Take care. See you guys.